Friends, I want to talk to you about being here, the wild here, the territory without maps, the place we get to when we hear that passage from the ancient book of Joshua, "You have not passed this way before." When we say we are in a territory without maps, we are already, perhaps unknowingly, referencing a map we once knew, a framework, a terrain, a way of locating ourselves in relation to what was. The phrase assumes that there was once a map, or at least a sense of direction, tied to a territory that felt familiar, navigable, maybe even safe. But now, that former place seems either inaccessible or erased. We cannot go back, and even if we could, the landscape has changed, or we have. Yet to be without a map is not simply to be disoriented, it's to confront the subtle illusion that the map ever was the territory. At some point, we begin to believe the representation was the reality. Our diagrams, our doctrines, our systems, and our strategies were the thing itself. But weren't the maps always a second-hand artifact? Didn't a cartographer have to first enter the wild, unknown terrain to chart it for others? Lewis and Clark and many others. The map came after the journey. And by the way, Lewis and Clark were recent history compared to the ancient cartographers. The map is not the journey. So we ask, which is more real to us, the map or the territory? The territory doesn't need a map to know where it is. It simply is. But we seem to need a map to convince ourselves we're not somewhere, or we are somewhere, to avoid the vulnerability of not knowing. Perhaps that's the ache. Not that we've lost the map, but that we've lost our certainty about where we are. But what if being here needs no map? What if presence requires no coordinates? What if the grief we feel over the absence of the map is really the grief of losing our illusion of control, which always threatens our ego? Then comes the real question. Where is here? Can we even know where here is without a map? And yet, we do know. We're here. If we know we're here, then we're acknowledging a present moment, a present place, however uncertain, however unmapped. Can here remain fixed? Great question. Or is here always in motion, like a horizon that moves as we move, or like a tide that never fully stays in one shape? If here is ever changing, then perhaps the illusion is not just in the map, but in the belief that here is static. Maybe here is a posture more than a place, a way of being present rather than a fixed location. And what of there? For as long as there is a here, there will always be a there, some other place, some imagined future, some remembered past, some idealized elsewhere. There becomes the projection of longing or of regret or of ambition. It's what we chase or flee. It's what we measure ourselves against. I want to be there. But perhaps our real work is not to strive toward being there, nor to mourn its distance, but to consent to the sacred weight of what it means to be here. To learn to dwell, to learn to inhabit, even when here feels unfamiliar or transitional or liminal. To be here is not to be stuck. It's to be awake. Yet, was I not awake before I arrived here? Surely there was a former here, a former place, a former season, a state of being where I was no less conscious, no less alive, no less present to what was. But now, this is here, and it feels different. It carries a different weight, a different texture. It asks new questions of me. Did I choose this here? Did I will myself into this moment, into this terrain, or did it happen? Did I happen upon it, stumbling as it were, unintentionally across some threshold I didn't know I was near? Or did I simply end up here, carried along by forces beyond my understanding? Was it circumstance? Was it providence? Was it both? Perhaps I was brought here against my awareness, maybe even against my permission. Maybe I resisted. Maybe I still do. And yet, I am here, and so here I am. Whether by my own hand or by unseen grace or by a convergence of countless known and unknown variables, I have arrived here. And this here now asks something of me. Not explanation, not certainty, but presence. I am decidedly aware of this here being where I am. There is no denying it. There is no escaping it. But I do not know this here. It's unfamiliar terrain. It's unnamed terrain. It's unmapped terrain. And given my tendencies and my proclivities, my craving for the predictable, the secure, the graspable, I would much prefer another here, a former one perhaps, or even an imagined there that promises clarity, structure, and belonging. But this here, this present place, this feels barren. It feels wild and untamed. And I don't think I'm the only one wrestling with it. It echoes like an empty canyon. It stretches out like a desert. It's vast and it's silent. I don't know how to navigate this place. I am, at least for the moment, left to my own devices, and I am not fond of what those devices offer. They tend to recycle old solutions for a new unknown. They reach for control when there is nothing left to manage. They construct narratives when silence is all that speaks. I feel as abandoned as this place appears, and yet I am still here, still breathing, still listening, still wondering if this emptiness conceals a presence I can't yet discern. I'm driven to ask. I'm impelled to ask. I'm compelled to ask. Why? Why now? Why here? I know these questions. They carry a particular weight. They stir a familiar ache, that affective residue of reaching into silence and receiving no reply. They rarely offer affirmation. They often expose vulnerability. More than anything, they awaken that old gnawing sensation I detest: powerlessness. Precisely what I do not want to feel. Not now, not here, but for presence. Not to be rescued from this place, but to be met in it. And perhaps the next thing does not begin with an answer, but with a willingness to stay here, until here begins to reveal what only wilderness can teach. I do not know why I am here, but I am. And though I resist it, rage against it, and wrestle with it, here refuses to release me. Or maybe here is not what holds me. Maybe what holds me is unseen, and here is simply the name I've given to the space between what was and what is yet to come. But this I know: I am weary of questions that collapse into silence. I'm weary of searching for coordinates in a land that does not speak in maps. I'm weary of the way why circles me like a predator, feeding off the soft parts of me that I cannot predict. Why? And still, there's breath in my body. There's pulse beneath the ache. There's a faint thread of being that says, you're still here. And that might be enough for now, not to understand, not to explain, but to remain, to abide, to trust. I suppose now I have to take stock. I'm here wherever here is, and I don't recall ever being here before. That alone is disorienting. And yet the very fact that I am here tells me something more than geography, more than circumstances. It tells me I'm not finished. It tells me I'm being summoned. It tells me I'm being called. There's something required of me in this place. Haven't figured it out. Something beckoning, not in thunder or spectacle, but in the quiet insistence of breath and being. Stay awake. Remain present. Don't run away. Don't flee. And though I long for something familiar, a landmark, a voice, a path I've walked before, there's none of that here. I can envision a there I would prefer, as I've already said, some idealized elsewhere. with comforts and contours I recognize. But to dwell in there is to indulge in fantasy, and I cannot afford to waste the precious life energy that is required of me to be here. All I can see now is space, open, unbounded space. No architecture, only terrain. And that terrain, to me, is wilderness. That's how I envision my current reality. Desert space, wild space, wilderness space, where the old supports, conventional support systems are all gone. The systems that once held me, nourished me, affirmed me, are, at least for now, absent. So this here requires something I cannot manufacture. Faith. Faith not in a plan, faith not in an outcome, faith not even in my own strength, but faith in a future I cannot see, a future that somehow sees me. James Hollis says the nature of nature is change. And so I wait, not with certainty, but with a quiet willingness to be seen by what is coming. What unfolds next doesn't begin in light, but in shadow, not in clarity, but in a sacred kind of disorientation. Because in the rhythm of creation, evening always comes first. There was evening and morning the first day, yet I deeply yearn to let come. Evening, darkness, at its fullest, the hush before dawn is not empty. It's full of what has not yet been spoken, full of memory that resists fading and hope that dares not yet rise. It's that sacred pause between relinquishing and receiving, between being unmade and being remade. Evening is where I begin. Evening is where I end. And in that rhythm, I'm invited to release, not because I no longer care, but because I can no longer carry what no longer carries me. That day, that former day, is done, gone the sun. And the question hovers, am I willing to let go what time has already let go of and released? And am I willing to let come what the Spirit is holding out before me? I'm learning, but not quickly. I'm learning, but slowly. Like eyes adjusting in the dark. This is where I am. Not quite there, but no longer back there either. This is here, the wilderness, the waiting, the watchfulness. I ache to rest. I ache to trust. I ache to let Sabbath rise, not as a break, but as a throne. The place where I'm reseated in God. And God in mercy is enthroned again in me. At its core, evening, darkness, as Parkhurst reminds us, comes from a Hebrew root meaning deviation. Not merely the absence of light, but a turning aside, a veering away from the path we thought we were on. By contrast, morning, day, carries the sense of movement, momentum, unfolding. We could say it this way: deviation from and movement toward. Both are movements. One feels like disorientation, the other like direction. Yet both are part of the sacred rhythm. Deviation, as Henri Bergson might say, is the peculiar possibility of the negative. Not evil, but the absence, the gap, the dislocation that opens us to newness. It's not comfortable, but it is necessary. Evening marks the deviation from there, the old terrain, the old attachments, the stories that once held me. Morning becomes the movement toward here, but here again is unfamiliar, and here begins in the dark. So what do I have to do? I have to adjust. I have to learn to be flexible. I have to acclimate. I have to embrace. Not as an idea, but as an experience, one that requires my yes, my acquiescence, my participation. This isn't passive surrender, it's active receptivity. If daylight desires to reveal something, if something holy wants to emerge in the clarity of morning, then I must be dressed in readiness, vested in hope, clothed in courage, sleeves rolled up for mystery. Making meaning in this season, I've discovered, is costly. It's costly because the years have not been kind. The palmer worm, the cankerworm, the creeping worm, they feasted on time, on joy, on fruit that should have been harvested. I'm told to forget there. Don't call to mind the former things, but memory lingers. It waits in the corners. It ambushes me in the stillness. And sometimes uninvited, it storms into my here with such force that I mistake this new dark for the old one. And so the work continues to bless the deviation, to yield to the movement, to say yes again without knowing where this territory without maps, this wilderness will lead, but trusting that even here, even now, the unforced rhythms of grace still pulse. There was evening and there was morning, and yet not the same evening, not the same morning. The river has moved on, and so must I. Heraclitus said we cannot step into the same river twice. But what he didn't say is how much we try. We return to old waters hoping for old clarity, but the current has shifted, and the one stepping in is older now, weathered, wondering, waiting. Time no longer feels like a line. It curls, it folds, it echoes. The ancients knew this. The time is not a march, but a dance of returning and becoming. And here, in the autumn of my life, the leaves fall, not as loss, but as a quiet making of space. Space for something not yet seen. Elijah once walked this wilderness, not as a man with answers, but as one worn thin by zeal and silence, by fire and famine, by the ache of being faithful in a world that had forgotten how to be faithful. He too laid down beneath the broom tree, longing for release, not knowing that the still small voice was already forming in his next nearest breath. Like him, I don't know where there is, only that I am definitely not there yet. I am here. And here is not empty. Here is not without presence. Here is where the rhythm still pulses, where the silence still speaks, and the wind, though ungraspable, still carries wordless